Recently, wild boar sightings have become alarmingly frequent around my uncle's farm. The once peaceful fields have been ripped apart, crops devoured overnight, and every morning, my uncle wakes with a heavy look of worry etched across his face. These creatures aren't just wild animals, they are cunning invaders, hard to control and even harder to predict. Faced with this relentless threat, I suggested traps. Simple, effective, and low cost. But we both knew that capturing a wild boar was just the beginning. From that moment forward, it became a battle of endurance, a struggle to reclaim our land from a force of nature that refused to be tamed. To maximize our chances, we set up multiple traps, mainly large round cage traps. These weren't ordinary devices, they were designed to capture an entire herd at once. Knowing that boars rarely travel alone, we carefully positioned them along trails stamped with fresh hoof prints and littered with droppings, clear signs that the herd had passed not long ago. Corn and cassava were placed as bait, dangling near the entrance, to tempt them into triggering the self-locking mechanism. At dawn, my uncle and I made our way silently to inspect the traps. The sight before us was shocking. Several wild boars thrashing violently inside the cages, their raw power rattling the steel bars. The mechanism had worked flawlessly. One touch of the bait, and the heavy door slammed shut, sealing the herd inside. One night, that was all it took for our strategy to pay off. But success brought new urgency. Their numbers were staggering. If we didn't act quickly, releasing some back into the forest while driving others away, the destruction would spread, not just across my uncle's farm, but to the neighboring villages as well. We had no time to hesitate. Every decision mattered, every move carried weight. This was no longer just about crops, it was about balance, survival, and protecting our community. Unlike the open fields, the dense forest called for different tactics. Smaller hunting traps, lightweight, portable, and easy to camouflage, were deployed along narrow trails. Approaching one such trap took me nearly 10 tense minutes, every step measured, eyes scanning for movement. A shadow appeared, the figure of a boar, sharp and familiar, but I held steady. These animals are clever, cautious, a wrong move could send them bolting. When the moment came, I squeezed the trigger, the shot echoing through the trees, clean, precise. One less threat to haunt the land. Technology was on our side too. Our traps were wired with sensors that sent instant signals to my device the moment one was triggered. As I finished my ambush to the east, another alert flashed across the screen. A herd, unaware, had walked straight into our setup. My rifle steadied. Another perfect shot. Relief washed over us, if only for a moment. But the forest never sleeps. As dusk fell, danger grew thicker. Terrain became treacherous, and unseen predators lurked in the shadows. Suddenly the silence shattered. A group of wild boars emerged, feeding aggressively in the half-light. My rifle snapped up. A single shot cracked the air. Another beast down. By the time night fell fully, exhaustion had gripped us. Mud caked our boots, sweat burned our eyes, yet the results spoke for themselves. The surviving boars had retreated deep into the forest. For now the fields were safe. But this isn't just our fight. Across the world, wild boars have become one of the most destructive invasive species on the planet. In Georgia alone, these animals cause over $150 million in agricultural damage every year. And it's not just crops, they devastate ecosystems, threatening native wildlife like the gopher tortoise on Ossabaw Island. They're more than a nuisance, they're a living pandemic. At 6:30 a.m., as the first light crept across the horizon, we pressed forward again. Hunting wild boars is a game of wits. Their sense of smell is razor sharp, their instincts honed for survival. The only way to stand a chance is to move against the wind, using every patch of cover, turning patience into our greatest weapon. Then, movement just a flicker in the brush. My rifle rose, and with a single pull the hunt began anew. One clean shot, one fallen beast. A promising start. But as the sun rose higher, so did the stakes. A massive boar burst from the thicket, muscle and fury in motion. It charged, unstoppable. For a split second we all froze, until Leon fired. One bullet ended the rampage, saving countless crops and protecting the fragile balance of life. In the highlands, David found his chance. From his elevated perch, he watched, waited, and struck with precision. Another threat neutralized. Every encounter carried danger. On the meadows, Thomas faced death itself. A boar charged like a runaway truck, closing the gap in seconds. At the last instant, a shot rang out. Inches from disaster, Thomas had survived. Heart pounding, we realized how thin the line was between hunter and hunted. As daylight waned, Leon found himself surrounded by an entire herd. There was no hesitation. His rifle roared again and again, bullets tearing through the chaos. When the dust settled, the fields were safe. For now, but victory was never final. The boars breed fast, and each hunt is only a temporary reprieve in a war with no end. In the heart of Alentejo's forests, their defiant roars still echo. Farmers remain desperate. Hunters remain vigilant. The balance of this land depends on it. Every step we take, every shot we fire, every trap we set, it all comes down to one question: who will outlast the other, the hunters or the beasts? The fields of Turkey were under fierce attack by a relentless herd of wild hogs, tearing through crops and devastating 2 farms in a single rampage. With livelihoods at stake, Thomas and his seasoned hunting team were hired for 5 days to put an end to the destruction. But this was no ordinary mission. These wild hogs were cunning, with sharp instincts and powerful noses that let them vanish before hunters and dogs could even get close. To stand a chance, Thomas brought along the most advanced gear, ensuring that every second of tracking and every shot fired would count. At the break of dawn, as the first light cut through the horizon, Thomas's team set off. At precisely 5 a.m., their vehicle roared across the dirt roads toward the first planned location. Luck struck early. In the distance, Thomas's sharp eyes caught the faint silhouette of a hog lurking in the tall grass. He closed in swiftly, pistol loaded and steady. One decisive pull of the trigger echoed through the morning stillness. The beast dropped instantly. The first victory was his, but the war had just begun. Without wasting a moment, Thomas pressed on toward the designated ambush point. Minutes later, a shadow crept through the underbrush, snout to the ground, searching for food. Every movement was calculated. Loading, chambering, aiming. A single crack split the silence, and the hog collapsed. Another flawless kill. There was no room for mistakes. Every shot had to be exact. Soon after, the barking of hunting dogs pierced the forest. They had cornered a group of hogs. Thomas sprinted toward the chaos, where not 1 but 3 beasts were surrounded by the pack. As one charged forward, a volley of gunfire erupted. One after another, the hogs fell, ending the first skirmish of the day. The farmlands were momentarily safe, but the team knew the fight was far from over. After a hard-earned morning, the hunters regrouped for a strategy meeting. A new formation was planned along the rugged slopes of Anatolia. Not long after, another boar came charging, only to be cut off by rapid, precise shots. On the eastern hillside, the dogs worked in perfect sync with the hunters, driving the hogs straight into waiting crosshairs. Each move, though seemingly choreographed, was the result of years of hard-earned experience. Once again, the land was safe, for now. As evening approached, the team began packing up, but fate had other plans. Before the weapons were holstered, a massive boar appeared in Thomas's scope. One cold, calculated shot ended its charge. Moments later, another beast fell to a teammate's rifle. By the end of the first day, the team had neutralized multiple threats, giving temporary relief to the villagers. But this was just the beginning. The battle against the invading herds had only started. The next morning, under the warm glow of the rising sun, the hunt resumed. The team meticulously scanned every track and every broken stem, aware that one mistake could let the beast slip away again. Armed with cutting-edge gear and determination, Thomas was more confident than ever. Arriving at the post-harvest fields, Thomas quickly spotted a massive hog running across the open land. It sprinted, but it could not outrun Thomas's rifle. One clean shot brought it down. The crew pushed deeper into the golden cornfields, every sense heightened, every second precious. A sudden rustle betrayed another hog, and before it could fully emerge, a single bullet dropped it instantly. Victories came one after another, but the mission demanded relentless pursuit. Soon the baying of the dogs led Thomas into a vegetable field, where another beast was trapped. Within minutes, Thomas had it locked in his sights. One sharp crack of the rifle ended the threat instantly. Another victory secured, another piece of farmland saved. Later that day, Thomas lay in wait on a hillside. Suddenly, an entire herd burst from below, thundering up the slope. Instinct took over. A burst of rapid fire followed, dropping the beasts one by one. As the hillside grew quiet, pride surged among the hunters. Their work ensured that tomorrow, farmers could harvest in peace. But the hunt wasn't over. Hours later, Thomas spotted another lone boar, trudging through the brush. With surgical precision, he took aim and fired. The beast collapsed immediately. Down the rugged hillside, Leon, another hunter, caught sight of a charging hog. In one sharp motion, he fired. The beast fell without resistance, adding to the day's triumphs. After days of unrelenting pursuit, Thomas's team finally secured the crops, shielding the villages from further destruction. But while Turkey's farmland found momentary peace, the story didn't end there. In northeastern Poland, the battle against wild hogs was even more brutal. Night after night, vast herds tore through tens of hectares of crops, inflicting millions of dollars in damage. The crisis forced the government to intervene, deploying hunting teams to reclaim the land. No stage, no theatrics, only raw, desperate battles where every shot meant survival. Nick's team led the charge. By day, they spread across fields, tracking trails with trained precision. Their first encounter came swiftly. A massive hog appeared, only to charge recklessly at James. Quick, decisive shots brought it down just in time, but there was no rest. Guided by the hounds, Nick's team pressed forward, eliminating threat after threat. At dusk, the hunters geared up for the night ambush. By 6 p.m., they were spread out across the fields. Minutes later, a group of hogs stumbled directly into their crosshairs. Gunfire erupted. The fattest hog dropped first, followed by the rest, their bodies scattered across the darkening fields. Moving swiftly to a neighboring area, Nick's binoculars revealed another group foraging. Without hesitation, he fired, every shot clean and final. By nightfall, the sound of gunfire echoed relentlessly across the farmland. Hogs fell one after another until the entire area was secured. Farmers who had feared ruin could finally breathe, knowing their crops had been defended. The toll of fallen hogs stood as proof of the hunters' tireless fight. For now, both Turkey and Poland had their lands restored. But in the shadows of the forests, the herds were still out there. The war between man and beast is far from over, and the question remains, when the next attack comes, will the hunters be ready?